PBS studio lights flickered like courtroom fluorescents. The roundtable set, mahogany, glass, and the faint smell of fresh varnish, felt more like a bench than a stage. At the center sat Federal District Judge Amara Okeke, 45, the youngest black woman ever confirmed to the bench, her judicial robe swapped for a midnight blue sheath dress that caught the camera's edge. Across from her, Professor Lionel Gray, 81, silver-haired SCOTUS blogger and self-styled originalist influencer, clutched a pocket constitution the way a preacher grips a Bible. His bow tie was the color of old parchment, his eyes the color of storm, clouds. Host Elena Vargas opened with the gravitas of a gavel. Tonight, the Judicial Recusal Reform Act. Can Congress force federal judges to step aside when a reasonable person might question impartiality? Professor Gray says no. Lifetime tenure means never explain. Judge Okeke, a co-architect of the bill, says yes. Transparency is the price of public trust. Cameras rolled. Phones rose. Bench slap was already trending in pre-show chatter. Gray spoke first, voice dry as dust. Article 3 is crystalline. Judges hold office during good behavior. That's a shield, not a suggestion. This bill, H.R. 4419, would let Congress yank that shield whenever a lobbyist cries, "appearance of bias." It's unconstitutional on its face. He flipped open his pocket constitution, thumb marking the page like a bookmark in history. I've blogged about this for 15 years. Lifetime tenure isn't a perk. It's insulation from political weather. The camera cut to Okeke. She sat still, hands folded, the way she did when a prosecutor grandstanded in her courtroom. "Professor," she said, voice low but carrying, "insulation isn't invisibility. The public has a right to know when a judge's financial ties, family connections, or past statements create reasonable doubt. H.R. 4419 doesn't remove judges. It requires disclosure and, in extreme cases, recusal. The Constitution allows Congress to regulate the court's inferior procedures. See Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18. Gray smiled the smile of a man who'd taught con law before Okeke was born. "With respect, Judge, you're conflating procedure with substance." The framers feared exactly this, Congress meddling in judicial independence. I cite Ex parte McCardle, 1869. Congress may not strip jurisdiction to punish a judge's rulings. Okeke didn't blink. McCardle was about appellate jurisdiction, not ethics. And you're citing the case that upheld Congress's power to withdraw jurisdiction midstream. Hardly a ringing endorsement of judicial untouchability. She slid a slim folder across the glass. But let's stay in the text. Article 3, Section 1. The judges shall hold their offices during good behavior. Good behavior includes avoiding the appearance of impropriety. Canon 2 of the Code of Conduct for United States judges, binding on every federal judge except the 9 on First Street, says exactly that. Gray waved it away. Canon 2 is aspirational. This bill makes it mandatory. That's the overreach, Elena leaned in. Specifics, please. Professor, you've called Section 12 the death knell of tenure. Judge, defend it. Gray pounced. Section 12 requires automatic recusal if a judge owns even one share in a litigant company. One share. That's not ethics. That's economic cleansing. And Rule 78C of the proposed regulations. Okeke's eyebrow arched like a drawn bow. There is no Rule 78C, Professor. She tapped her tablet. The Federal Rules of Judicial Procedure filled the screen behind them. Searchable PDF glowing. Title 28, United States Code, Appendix. No 78C. Perhaps you mean 28 U.S.C., paragraph 455, the existing recusal statute, or the proposed Rule 59B in the bill's regulatory appendix? Gray's fingers drummed the Constitution. I meant the spirit of the rule-making authority. Details are for staffers. The control room erupted. A producer whispered, "Zoom on Gray's face." Okeke let the silence breathe. Details are for judges, Professor, especially when lifetime tenure is invoked as a license to ignore them. Elena smelled blood. Judge, the professor says, lifetime tenure means never explain. Your response? Okeke turned to the camera, the way she addressed juries. Lifetime tenure means never fear retaliation. It does not mean never disclose conflicts. The public isn't asking for judges' heads. They're asking for daylight. She lifted a second folder. Thinner, older, edges yellowed. Speaking of daylight, Professor Gray's blog, Originalist Dispatch, March 12, 1994. Footnote 17. She read aloud, "Mandatory recusal for apparent bias is not merely prudent. It is constitutionally compelled where public confidence in judicial impartiality is at stake. The alternative is a judiciary that cloaks itself in mystery and invites cynicism." She closed the folder. Law Review, Volume 107, page 412. You wrote that before I passed the bar. Gray's bow tie seemed to tighten. Academic hypotheticals evolve. The court's 1990s recusal cases. Which cases? Okeke asked softly. Liteki v. United States, Cheney-Vav United States District Court, both upheld recusal for extrajudicial bias. Neither struck down congressional authority to define appearance. Gray tried to pivot. This bill lets the Judicial Conference, political appointees, police judges. That's a separation of powers violation. Okeke shook her head. The Judicial Conference is judges, not politicians. And Section 4 explicitly preserves Article 3 removal only by impeachment. Congress isn't firing anyone. We're requiring transparency. Elena. Professor, your rebuttal? Gray leaned forward, voice rising. Transparency is a Trojan horse. Next comes quotas, then term limits. The framers. Okeke cut in, calm as a closing argument. The framers also wrote the necessary and proper clause. Congress has regulated judicial procedure since 1789, salaries, districts, even the number of justices. Recusal rules are no different. She tapped the tablet again. A 1994 Congressional Research Service report appeared. Funny thing, your amicus brief in Microsoft v. United States, 2001. You urged the D.C. Circuit to adopt robust recusal protocols for judges with tech stock holdings. Quote, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Secrecy breeds suspicion. Gray's mouth opened, closed. That was antitrust, not... Same Constitution, Okeke said. Same sunlight. The studio lights felt hotter. Gray's aide, visible in the wings, frantically Googled on a phone. The chyron crawled. Live fact check. No rule. 78, C exists. Elena sensed the shift. Judge, critics say recusal decisions belong solely to the judge. Isn't self-policing enough? Okeke's answer was immediate. Self-policing works when trust is high. It fails when a judge's spouse lobbies the same agency suing before them, or when a judge's former law firm argues 40% of the docket. H.R. 4419 creates a rebuttable presumption. Disclose, explain, let a 3-judge panel review if challenged. The judge still decides, but not in a vacuum. Gray tried one last stand. This erodes collegiality. Judges will recuse to avoid controversy, gutting expertise. Okeke smiled, not triumphant, but tired. Collegiality isn't a synonym for complicity, and expertise without credibility is just noise. Elena. We'll take a break. When we return, viewer questions. Commercials. Gray's aide rushed over with a laptop. Gray scrolled, muttering. Okeke sipped water, checked her phone. Bench slap at 1.2 million tweets. A law student DM'd, "You just made con law sexy." Second half. Elena read a viewer text. Judge Okeke, how do you respond to claims this bill targets conservative justices? Okeke. It targets no one. It applies to every Article 3 judge. District, Circuit, Supreme Court. If a justice's spouse runs a dark money group funding cases before the court, the public deserves to know. Left, right, center. Sunlight doesn't discriminate. Gray, composed again, tried gravitas. Judge, I've clerked for Justice Blackmun. I've argued Caperton. Recusal is case by case. Codification invites abuse. Okeke nodded. Caperton required recusal when a party spent $3 million electing a judge. This bill sets a $50,000 threshold for disclosure, hardly draconian. And Caperton was 5-4. Congress can clarify where the court fears to tread. Elena. Final question. Professor, any part of the bill you could support? Gray paused, the longest pause of the night. If Section 12 were narrowed to direct financial interests above $100,000 perhaps, but Rule 78C remains a bridge too far. Okeke's voice was gentle. Again, no Rule 78C. But I'll take the $100,000 amendment to committee. Transparency with guardrails. That's the goal. Elena closed. A rare moment of potential compromise. We'll be right back. Cameras cut. Gray stood slowly, joints creaking. He extended a hand. Judge, sharp as advertised. Okeke shook it. Professor, your footnote 17 aged better than your memory. He chuckled. Actually chuckled. Touché. Aftermath, 12 hours later. Clips detonated. The Rule 78C flub hit 5 million views by dawn. Law Twitter crowned Okeke Chief Justice of Clapbacks. Gray's blog traffic crashed his server. At 3:17 a.m., Gray emailed Okeke. 1994 me was on to something. Coffee? I'll bring the footnote, you bring the bill text. They met at a Capitol Hill diner. No cameras. Gray arrived with a dog-eared Harvard Law Review. Okeke brought the 312-page H.R. 4419, annotated in 3 colors, over burnt coffee. They drafted an op-ed. When Originalism Needs a Recusal. Washington Post, published 48 hours later. We disagree on much, but agree on this. Judicial legitimacy requires disclosure. Lifetime tenure is a public trust, not a private privilege. The piece went viral for unity, not combat. 1 week later. The House Judiciary Committee amended Section 12, a $100,000 threshold, sunset clause, judicial veto preserved. 3 Republican co-sponsors signed on. Gray recorded a podcast with Okeke. Originalism meets reality. Downloads 1.4.